Chapter 13, Crisis of Faith. Part 1, The Hollow Center. There is a particular kind of silence that follows revelation. It is not the silence of ignorance. It is not the silence of peace. It is the silence that comes when something you believed unshakable reveals a hollow center. The ruins of First Judgment stood around us like the bones of a once living beast. Pillars rose in broken symmetry. Marble lay split by time and frost. Carvings of Solon's lion crest had eroded to soft suggestions of authority. I stood in the center of what had once been the Tribunal's holiest ground, and felt none of the reverence I had expected, only absence, not of divinity, of certainty. Null Star was not a destroyer. The oath had been altered. Solon regretted the betrayal. Those truths did not thunder. They whispered, and the whisper was worse. For years, I had believed my strength came from surrender. My will aligned so completely with divine command that doubt could not survive inside me. Now doubt lived there comfortably. It had unpacked its things. I could not evict it. I could only examine it. The morning mist clung low to the valley beyond the ruins. Sunlight struggled to break through thin cloud cover, as if the sky itself hesitated. Fitting, I walked slowly across fractured stone toward the central dais. My boots scraped against grit and time-worn inscriptions. This was where the first oaths were sworn. This was where the light had once felt undeniable. I placed my palm against the cracked altar and closed my eyes. I bind my will to divine command. The words surfaced automatically, but now they felt foreign. What happens when divine command is not free? What happens when the voice that speaks through heaven is distorted? The oath had never accounted for that possibility. Why would it? We were never meant to question the source. Only ourselves. Part 2, Prayer Through Fracture. I didn't tell the others I intended to pray. They would have known anyway. Prayer had been my reflex since childhood, before battle, before sleep, before decision, even before doubt, if I am honest. I moved to a section of wall where Solon's sigil remained faintly intact. The lion's face had lost its mane to erosion. The wings were chipped. The eyes remained. I touched them. Solon. The name carried weight, not warmth. Weight. The air tightened immediately. There was presence. Faint. Strained. I reached inward. There had once been a sensation when I did this, a current like standing in shallow water as tide moved past my legs. Steady, assured. Now it flickered, like a lantern struggling against a wind. Protect. The word formed inside my mind, clear for a breath. Then something else pressed forward. Submit. Cold, sharp, artificial. I staggered back, breath catching. That second impulse hadn't been Solon. I knew it instinctively. It had authority in its tone, but none of the texture I associated with him. The difference was subtle but undeniable, like the difference between genuine flame and alchemical imitation. Stop, I whispered. The pressure vanished abruptly. What remained felt exhausted, not absent, wounded. For the first time, I did not feel rebuked by silence. I felt it reaching and failing. If Solon was bound, then my obedience strengthened the one holding the chain. If Solon was complicit, then obedience aided corruption. Either way, blind compliance was no longer righteousness. It was negligence. Part 3, Marin's Burden. Marin was sharpening her blade. When I returned, she did not look up as I approached. You felt it, she said. Yes. Worse? Clearer. She stopped sharpening. That caught my attention. I once felt that, she said quietly. The interference? No. The certainty cracking. I waited. She rarely spoke of that mission, the one that haunted her. The village, she continued. The command was explicit, the evidence thin. I obeyed, her jaw tightened. I told myself hesitation was weakness, that doubt was pride, that my discomfort was immaturity. And afterward, I asked. Nothing. The word fell heavy. No reassurance, no warmth, just silence. She finally looked at me. I think I knew before I acted, she said. But I wanted the comfort of obedience. The admission struck deeper than accusation ever could. You regret it. Yes. Do you regret believing? No. That surprised me. I regret not listening to myself. The distinction settled inside me like a stone. Belief was not the enemy. Unexamined obedience was. Part 4. Lisa and the Fire That Questions. Lisa found me near dusk. She climbed the broken column beside me without invitation. You look like someone who's arguing with the sky, she said. I am. Winning? No. She let that linger before speaking again. You think faith means never doubting. That's what I was taught. That's what control prefers. I frowned. Faith that cannot survive doubt isn't faith, she continued. It's dependency. On what? Authority. She turned toward me fully. If Solon is bound, that doesn't erase what he represents. And what does he represent? I asked. Justice, protection, radiant truth. And if he allowed the oath to be altered, then he failed. You say that easily. I say it honestly. The word failed echoed louder than I expected. Gods are not perfection, she said gently. They are principles shaped by power. If power is twisted, the principle can still exist. I stared at the valley below. You're asking me to believe goodness can survive weakness. Yes. That feels dangerous. It is, she replied. So is blind obedience. Her fire flickered faintly around her fingers, responding to emotion she did not suppress. You don't have to abandon Solon, she said softly. You may have to defend him. The thought shifted everything. Part 5. The argument. At twilight, we gathered as the sun dipped behind broken pillars. Caelan spoke first. Malrick's ritual siphons divine essence. That's clear. The weakening of other gods supports it. The instability in divine channels confirms it. Keith cracked his knuckles. Then we stop him. How? Marin demanded. Break his skull. That makes him a martyr. Caelan said flatly. Bram cleared his throat. If Malrick falls without exposure, the Tribunal will blame Nullstar. Silence followed. I felt their attention shift toward me, not because I demanded it, but because I embodied the fracture. I will not assassinate him, I said. Keth scowled. Then what? I will confront him publicly. Caelan exhaled sharply. That's suicide, perhaps. Marin stepped closer. You're thinking of Dawnspire. Yes, the lion's den, the heart of the order. If I accuse him alone, I am heretic, I continued. If I accuse him with proof, the Tribunal fractures. It's already fracturing, Caelan said. He was right. Paladins felt their powers weaken. Clerics whispered of unanswered prayers. The light flickered. The only question was whether truth would surface before chaos consumed it. Part 6. Memory of Marble. That night, sleep came reluctantly. I dreamed of Dawnspire, of marble corridors gleaming in morning light, of Malrick's voice echoing across the courtyard. Doubt is the enemy of order, the words repeated. The marble beneath my feet cracked. From the fissure rose a different symbol, a star without center, null star. The lion crest turned its head toward me. Its eyes were weary. Choose, it said. I woke with my heart pounding. No command, no decree. Choose. Part 7. The burden of choice. Morning came thin and pale. I stood at the altar once more. For years I believed righteousness flowed downward, from God to paladin to world. Now I understood something more frightening. Righteousness required participation. If Solon was bound, then my obedience strengthened the chain. If Solon was complicit, then obedience enabled corruption. Either way, conscience was not rebellion. It was preservation. I returned to the others. They saw something had shifted. I cannot serve as I was trained, I said. Marin nodded. Then how? Bram asked gently. I will not bind my will to distorted command. Thalen's gaze sharpened. To what, then? Conscience. Keth grinned faintly. That's a harder master. Yes. Bram's voice was steady. Harder masters shape stronger souls. I drew breath slowly. We go to Dawnspire. No one argued. Part 8. The tremble beneath. As we prepared to leave, I felt it again, not in the sky, in the earth, a tremor beneath the ruin, subtle, strained, chains pulled taut, null star, or the seal weakening, or the divine structure responding to choice. For a heartbeat, warmth brushed my consciousness. Not command, not authority, recognition, and then silence. But this silence did not accuse. It waited. Part 9. The crisis named. I once believed faith was surrender. Now I know it is engagement. I once believed obedience ensured virtue. Now I know virtue demands discernment. The crisis is not whether Solon exists. He does. I have felt him strain. The crisis is whether I can serve a God who is not sovereign, whether I can defend a light that flickers, whether I can oppose an order I once swore to uphold. The answer is not simple, but it is clear. I will confront Malrick. I will reveal the truth. I will not execute corrupted commands. If Solon speaks again, I will listen, but I will choose. And if that makes me heretic, then perhaps heresy is only truth spoken before the world is ready. We mounted our horses as the sun climbed higher. The ruins of First Judgment stood silent behind us. No radiant sign followed, only wind through broken pillars. But inside me, something steadied. Not certainty, responsibility. And responsibility felt closer to light than obedience ever had. Part X. The night the sky answered back. We should have left at once. Instead, we lingered. The decision had been made to go to Dawnspire, to confront Malrick publicly, but resolve does not erase fear. It merely organizes it. That night, the air felt wrong, not storm-heavy, not oppressive. Listening, I stood watch alone at the edge of the ruins, while the others slept in uneasy rotation. The valley below lay silver beneath moonlight. Broken pillars cast long skeletal shadows across the cracked courtyard. I did not kneel to pray. I stood. If the divine wished to speak, it could meet me upright. The tremor began subtly, not in the ground this time, in the sky. The stars flickered. At first I thought it was cloud passing thin across their light. Then I realized it was rhythm, a pulse, uneven, like a heartbeat, skipping. The air thickened, pressure pressed inward from all sides, not crushing but compressing. Sound dampened, even the wind seemed to hesitate mid-motion. And then light split the sky, not lightning, not celestial radiance, a fracture, a seam torn across the firmament, thin but visible, like a crack in polished glass. I staggered backward. From that fracture poured something I cannot adequately describe. Not form, not flame, essence. It coalesced before me in wavering shape, half lion, half star, sullen, and behind him, bound in dimmer brilliance, Null Star. The sight stole breath from my lungs. Solon's wings flickered, translucent at their edges. Light bled from cracks along his frame. His mane shimmered, but not with strength, with strain. And Null Star, not a destroyer, not monstrous, a star without center, a sphere of contained radiance threaded with chains of light that dug inward like hooks. They did not stand as enemies. They existed as two notes forced to share the same dissonant chord. Caelan. The voice struck through marrow. Not heard, felt. Two tones overlapped within it. One weary, one vast. I dropped to one knee instinctively. No, the voice pressed. The word carried dual resonance. Do not kneel, do not submit. I forced myself upright. What is happening? I demanded. The fracture above pulsed violently. Solon's shape wavered. Constraint came the answer. Null Star's radiance flared faintly. Interference, another tone layered beneath. The chains around Null Star tightened, glowing with sigils I recognized faintly. Tribunal script. My blood ran cold. Malrick, I asked. Ambition, Solon answered. Fear, Null Star added. Images flooded my mind. The seven lights gathered centuries ago. Null Star refusing an unjust decree, the first fracture in divine consensus, the Tribunal's earliest leaders crafting seals, not to imprison evil, but to preserve authority. They did not trust a god who could refuse them. So they bound refusal. They wrapped Null Star in divine accord language. They altered the oath. They inserted relinquished doubt. The vision intensified. Malrick kneeling in secret beneath Dawnspire. Ancient relics surrounding him. Siphoning ritual weaving through weakened seams in the divine compact. He was not merely stealing power. He was exploiting a pre-existing fracture. You altered the oath, I said to Solon. Silence, not denial. Regret. We permitted. Solon's voice strained. For unity, Null Star added. For control, Solon whispered. The confession tore through me. You chose order over truth. Yes, the admission shook the sky. Light dimmed. Null Star's radiance flared in painful brilliance. Truth refused, Null Star said. Order preserved, Solon answered. Corruption grew. Both voices merged. I clenched my fists. You allowed this. We feared dissolution, Solon replied. We feared fracture, Null Star echoed. And now, I demanded. The chains tightened. Malrick's ritual flashed through my mind again. Sigils feeding from the weakened bond between gods. He binds what was once voluntarily constrained, Solon said. He weaponizes compromise, Null Star added. And the command to execute the oracle, I asked. Solon's light flickered violently. Not mine. The second tone hissed through the fracture. Distorted rage surged through me. You let him speak in your voice. The silence that followed was heavier than thunder. Constraint limits resistance, Solon answered. Choice remains, Null Star said. The two shapes flickered as if struggling against invisible tide. Free us, I asked. No, Null Star replied immediately. Choose, Solon corrected. The fracture above began to seal. Light thinned. If I expose Malrick, I said quickly the Tribunal fractures ensemble. It must, Nullstar answered. Without truth, Solon said, and light rots. The sky sealed, the pressure vanished. The courtyard returned to ordinary night. I stood alone beneath stars that looked unchanged. But I was not unchanged. My God had confessed, not evil, not malevolent, compromised, and regretful. Part 11. The argument that almost broke us. I did not wait until morning. I woke them all. Caelan reached for his bow instantly. Merrin had her blade drawn before her eyes, fully opened. What happened? She demanded. They appeared, I said. Silence fell. Who? Lysa breathed. Solon and Nullstar. Keth blinked. Both? Yes. Bram's eyes sharpened. Tell us everything. I did. The confession, the altered oath, the voluntary constraint that became vulnerability. Malrick exploiting divine compromise, the command not being Solon's. When I finished, the silence was not reverent. It was volatile. They altered the oath? Merrin's voice was ice. Yes. For unity, she repeated. For control. Caelan swore under his breath. They feared dissent more than corruption. Keth's jaw tightened visibly. So your God helped bind the one who refused injustice? Yes. The word felt like swallowing stone. Lisa's expression was pained, but not surprised. They're not infallible, she said softly. They're responsible. Merrin shot back. Bram's voice cut gently through rising tension. They regret it. That doesn't undo it, Merrin said sharply. No, I said quietly. It doesn't. Keth stepped forward. So, what are we doing? He demanded. Freeing the star, freeing the lion, or burning the order? The question hung heavy. Caelan looked at me. You said they told you to choose. Yes. And what does that mean? It means they cannot command this outcome. Merrin's eyes flashed. Convenient. The accusation stunned me. What? You finally get divine clarity, and it's a refusal to decide. They are constrained. So are we. She snapped. The courtyard trembled faintly beneath the intensity of her voice. You think this is only your crisis, she continued. I burned a village because I obeyed. Now we learn the oath itself was altered, and they regret it? That's supposed to comfort me? Her anger was not at me. It was at heaven, and it was justified. I am not defending what they did, I said firmly. I am acknowledging it. And that changes what? Caelan pressed. It changes responsibility, I answered. We cannot rely on divine correction. We must act. Bram nodded slowly. That is the core of it. Keth exhaled sharply. So we're doing this without expecting miracles. Yes. Merrin held my gaze a long moment. Then say it clearly, she said. I met her stare. I will not obey Solon blindly again. The words settled into the ruin like a new foundation stone. I will confront Malrick, I continued. I will expose the altered oath. I will reveal the binding of Nullstar. And if Solon objects, I inhaled slowly, he will have to argue. No thunder struck, no divine rebuke fell. Only wind moved between broken pillars. Merrin finally sheathed her blade. Then we stand with you, she said, but it was no longer simple solidarity. It was chosen alignment. Part 12. The lure of manipulation. Sleep did not come easily afterward. When it did, it brought something deeper than dream. I found myself not in Dawnspire, but in something older, a chamber before architecture, lights suspended in vastness. The 7 lights gathered in radiant assembly, Nullstar's refusal echoing through divine strata. The fear was palpable, not fear of evil, fear of dissent. What if mortals follow slow refusal. One voice asked, "What if order fractures?" Another added, "Unity was valued above justice, consensus above conscience." And so they crafted a compromise. Not prison, not initially. Constraint. Null Star would remain bound within divine accord. Solon agreed, for stability, for preservation. But constraint alters balance. Mortals sensed the shift. Tribunal leaders codified obedience more strictly. Relinquished doubt entered the oath, not because Solon commanded it, because mortals feared divine hesitation. Centuries later, Malrick discovered the old seam, the voluntary constraint. He inserted ritual, hooked into divine tension, turned compromise into leverage. God manipulation was not new. It was opportunistic. The vision dissolved. I woke with clarity, sharp as steel. The light was never meant to erase conscience. It was meant to guide it. Part 13, Departure and Fracture. We left first judgment at dawn. The sky looked deceptively calm, but beneath it, something shifted. Halfway down the valley road, Caelan stopped abruptly. "What is it?" I asked. He pointed east. Smoke. Too much. Too dark. Dawnspire's direction. The tremor returned, not beneath earth this time, but through divine current. Paladins across the land were feeling it. I knew it instinctively, their powers flickering, their prayers splitting. The Tribunal was beginning to fracture. A messenger rider crested a distant ridge at reckless speed. Armor gleamed, Tribunal crest visible even from afar. He did not see us. He rode hard toward Dawnspire. Something had happened, or begun. Marin's jaw set. "It's starting." "Yes," I said. Far in the distance, faint but unmistakable, a column of radiant light surged skyward. Not divine blessing, not celestial descent, ritual ignition. Malrick was accelerating. The fracture in heaven had moved to earth. I turned my horse toward the rising smoke. "Ride," I said. No hesitation, no doubt. We rode not as instruments of unquestioned light, but as witnesses determined to drag truth into day. Behind us, the ruins of First Judgment stood silent. Ahead, Dawnspire began to tremble, and somewhere beyond sight, the Tribunal, once monolithic, began to crack from within.